In the beginning, it felt like we had everything anyone could ever want. Our love was undeniable, and I genuinely believed I was the perfect wife. You were always so attentive, making sure I felt cherished, secure, and loved. It was the kind of relationship people dream about, one where you can't imagine anything ever going wrong. We used to spend nights talking about our future, planning a lifetime together. We thought we'd always be side by side, no matter what life threw at us. Then, when we found out I was pregnant with twins, it was like the universe had given us even more than we could have ever imagined. I still remember the look on your face when we found out it was a boy and a girl. It felt like everything was falling into place. A family, just like I'd always wanted. I was overjoyed, thinking I was fulfilling my greatest role, being your wife and the mother of our children. I threw myself into it, daydreaming about the future we were going to build with Emma and Sam. All my energy, my love, my focus, it was on us, on this family we had started together. We got so lucky, too. We were able to buy that beautiful house just a few doors down from your parents. It seemed like everything was perfectly aligned for us. Your mom came over all the time to help out, and I appreciated it more than I could express. She was such a big part of our lives in those early days, and I thought having her nearby made everything a little easier. Emma and Sam grew so quickly, and you took to fatherhood in a way that made me fall in love with you all over again. You were hands-on from the start, changing diapers, staying up during those sleepless nights, and being fully present for everything. I couldn't have asked for more. Every day you found a way to remind me how beautiful I was, how lucky you were to have me. It made me feel like I had everything right in front of me. We even talked about the future, about taking a trip to Italy, the place I'd always dreamed of visiting. It felt like we were building a life full of memories that would carry us into old age. I loved making your favorite dinner, lasagna with garlic bread, just to see that smile on your face. Those little moments made everything seem perfect. Looking back, it felt like I had it all. A husband who loved me, 2 beautiful children, and a life that seemed like it was only getting better. I loved you, I loved our life, and I loved the family we were creating. But now, I can't help but wonder, was I really that bad of a wife? Was it all just an illusion, something I wanted to believe was perfect when maybe it never really was? Then came the day I found that note on the kitchen counter. It was just a few lines, hastily written, but it felt like my entire world had come crashing down. You said you were moving into your dad's house and asked for something so simple, yet so heavy, space. That single word left me reeling. Space? After everything we'd been through? But I convinced myself that maybe you really just needed time to grieve, time to process the losses of both your parents. So, I gave it to you, even though it tore me apart. Weeks passed in painful silence. I waited, hoping for some sign that you were ready to talk, ready to come back to us. But all I got were a few cold, impersonal texts. Please, just give me time to mourn. That's all you ever said, over and over, as if those words could hold our marriage together. The loneliness was unbearable, but I kept waiting, foolishly believing that if I gave you enough space, you'd come back. But the silence gnawed at me, and eventually, worry took over. One afternoon, I decided to drive over to your dad's house and check on you. I told myself I was just concerned, that maybe you needed someone to remind you that we were still here, waiting. But as I pulled up, something felt off. There were cars parked all over the place, and the sound of laughter spilled out from the backyard. My stomach tightened as I got out of the car. This wasn't what I expected. I thought maybe it was a family gathering, something small to help you cope. But the noise and the energy told me otherwise. I walked around to the backyard, curiosity and dread swirling inside me. When I peeked over the fence, what I saw made my heart stop. It wasn't just a get-together. It was a full-blown party. A gender reveal party. My eyes scanned the crowd, and there you were, standing front and center with some short, dumpy blonde clinging to your side like she belonged there. I stood frozen, watching as you both laughed and popped the balloon. Pink confetti exploded into the air. It's a girl. I couldn't breathe. The world seemed to tilt around me as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Was this really happening? Before I could gather my thoughts, she spotted me. Her voice cut through the crowd like a knife. "Get the fuck out of here," she screamed, pointing at me like I was the intruder. All eyes turned toward me, and in that moment, I felt like I was being torn apart. But it was your face, the anger, the fury, that's burned into my memory. You looked at me like I was the problem, like I didn't belong there, like I was ruining her moment. I turned and ran for my car, my heart racing, tears already stinging my eyes. But you didn't let me go quietly. You followed, yelling at me, the venom in your voice unmistakable. While you screamed, the rest of the crowd rushed to comfort her, the woman who had taken my place. I couldn't believe this was my life now. This wasn't the man I married, the man I'd built my world around. And yet, there you were, treating me like a stranger who had no right to be hurt. As I drove away, I realized that the person I thought I knew was gone. After that day, things only spiraled further out of control. Whatever little hope I had left that you'd come to your senses vanished quickly. Your dad's inheritance came through, and suddenly, she was flaunting your newfound wealth like it was her personal trophy. Within days, she was cruising around town in a brand new Range Rover, making sure everyone knew exactly who was in control now. But that wasn't enough for her. No, she made it her mission to torment me, driving by my house multiple times a day, laying on the horn like a child, shouting insults out the window. It was a daily reminder that she'd stolen not just my husband, but the life I thought I'd built. It didn't stop there, though. The harassment escalated fast. My phone lit up with threatening texts from numbers I didn't even recognize. She made it impossible for me to have any peace, messaging me with the most vicious insults and threats at all hours of the day and night. I changed my number more times than I can count, but somehow, she always found a way to get a hold of it again. I started looking over my shoulder everywhere I went, jumping every time my phone buzzed. I didn't feel safe in my own home, and the constant anxiety ate away at me. Then, she took things to another level. She posted a video of the gender reveal party on TikTok, showing off the moment I stumbled across them like it was some sort of entertainment. I don't know how or why, but that video went viral. It spread like wildfire, and suddenly, it wasn't just my personal hell, it was public. People online were laughing, commenting, sharing their opinions about our mess of a situation, and I became the punchline. But it wasn't just the embarrassment I had to deal with. You both lost your jobs because of the scandal. I don't know if it was the attention or the backlash, but the company let you both go. And of course, she blamed me. From there, the harassment reached a whole new level. The texts became even more vicious, sometimes coming in rapid bursts like she couldn't stop herself. She made it her mission to tear me down, and I was powerless to stop it. Every day, I dreaded leaving the house, not knowing what fresh hell she would bring next. One afternoon, I walked out of the grocery store and found my car. My heart sank when I saw the word bitch scratched deep into the paint, stretching across the entire side. It was as if she wanted to make sure I knew exactly how she felt about me, as if the verbal harassment wasn't enough. I stood there staring at it, unable to breathe, unable to move. All the strength I'd been holding onto crumbled in that moment. I couldn't hold it together anymore. The weight of it all, the betrayal, the harassment, the fear, it finally broke me. I collapsed right there in the parking lot, tears streaming down my face, wondering how my life had fallen apart so completely. When everything became too overwhelming for me to handle alone, my brother stepped in, taking on the burden I couldn't anymore. He was furious, and I think part of him had been waiting for the chance to confront you. He served you the divorce papers himself, something I just didn't have the strength to do. From what he told me, she threw an absolute tantrum, flinging the papers across the yard like a child. And you? You just stood there, speechless, not even attempting to defend yourself. The sight must have been pathetic, two people once close, now on opposite sides of a war you'd ignited. You and my brother had been tight for years, but even that bond seemed shattered beyond repair. When it came time for court, I thought I'd seen the worst of it, but I wasn't prepared for you to show up with her. Of course, she strutted in, smirking like she'd already won. Throughout the proceedings, she whispered snide comments loud enough for me to hear, making everything feel even more humiliating. But karma works in strange ways, and she pushed it too far. The judge had enough of her disrespect and threw her out of the courtroom. I watched as she stormed off, and for a brief moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Still, it was hard to believe that this woman, this vile person, had played such a role in destroying my marriage. The kids, on the other hand, saw through her from the start. They hated her. Every time they returned from a visit with you, they brought back horror stories about her behavior. She smoked constantly, even around them, drank as if it was a sport, and spent your dad's money like it would never run out. Emma and Sam were old enough to understand what was happening, and they made it clear they didn't want to be anywhere near her. They came home one day and told me that she even had the nerve to say you never really loved me. I can't imagine how much that confused and hurt them. I could see the disgust in their eyes whenever they mentioned her, and I hated that they were being dragged into this mess. But then, everything took a turn. The news came that she had lost the baby. As terrible as it sounds, I couldn't help but feel some relief. I felt awful for even thinking it, but deep down, I was glad. I couldn't bear the thought of her raising your child, of her being tied to our lives forever. It wasn't long after that when I learned you had taken her on a trip to Italy, the one place I had always dreamed of going, the place we had talked about so often. It felt like the ultimate betrayal, and my heart broke all over again. How could you take her there? How could you give her what I had wanted for so long? But then, karma struck again. Shortly after that lavish trip, she was arrested for fentanyl, of all things. That's what caused the miscarriage. She had been using drugs while pregnant. It was like something out of a bad dream. As if that wasn't enough, she managed to wreck the Range Rover too, the same one she had flaunted so proudly. And just like that, she was out of your life. You kicked her to the curb, and I couldn't help but think, maybe now you'll finally see what you threw away. Weeks passed, and then out of nowhere, I got a text from you. Just one word, hey. After everything that had happened, after all the pain you'd caused, that was all you had to say? I stared at the message for a while, torn between anger and disbelief. I couldn't bring myself to respond. What was the point? But ignoring you didn't stop you. Not long after, you showed up at my door. I didn't want to let you in, didn't want to hear whatever excuse or apology you had prepared. But for some reason, maybe out of morbid curiosity or maybe because I needed closure, I let you talk. You stood there, fumbling for words, telling me how sorry you were. You said losing both of your parents had broken you and that you didn't know how to handle it. You blamed the distance between us on me, saying I'd been too busy with the kids, with the house, with keeping our lives running. You told me she had been there for you when I wasn't, that you were weak, that she pursued you relentlessly. But the worst part was when you said you never really loved her, not the way you loved me. You said it like it would somehow make things better, like that would erase everything you had done. As if it justified your betrayal. I stood there, numb, barely processing the words spilling out of your mouth. And all I could think to ask was I really that bad of a wife? That's the only thing I wanted to know. I needed to understand why you had chosen to destroy everything we built together. You looked at me and shook your head. No, you said quietly. But the damage was done. Before I could say anything else, Emma and Sam walked through the door. Emma took one look at my face and immediately knew. She didn't hesitate, didn't hold back. She screamed at you, a scream filled with all the anger and hurt I hadn't allowed myself to release. Sam, in his usual calm way, didn't yell. He simply walked over, opened the front door, and told you to leave. They were only 14, but they already understood more about loyalty and love than you ever did. That was the final push I needed. With the support of my family, I sold the house. It wasn't home anymore, just a painful reminder of what had been. We packed up and moved to a beach town near my brother, starting over in a place that felt fresh and new. The kids and I have settled into our new life, and I've even made a few friends along the way. It feels like a fresh start, and though the scars are still there, we're healing. Slowly, but surely. As for dating, it's not even on my radar. After everything, it's the last thing on my mind. Right now, all that matters is rebuilding our lives, focusing on the kids, and figuring out who I am outside of the wreckage you left behind. Healing takes time, and that's where my energy is going, for me and for them.